What if I told you that the most powerful men in ancient history weren't European, weren't Asian, but African kings who controlled empires so vast and rich that they made Rome seem like a village? What if I revealed that these kings possessed knowledge and technologies that our modern civilization still cannot fully comprehend? Africa was not only the cradle of humanity, it was the cradle of civilization, imperial power, and the wealth that shaped the ancient world. But this history has been systematically erased, distorted, and hidden for centuries. Today, you will discover the truth about the African kings who literally controlled heaven and earth, who commanded empires that stretched across entire continents, and who possessed riches that surpassed everything we know about economic power. Imagine kings who controlled trade routes between 3 continents, who possessed so much gold that they caused inflation simply by passing through a city, who built monuments so impressive that modern archaeologists still cannot explain how they were erected. We are talking about African civilizations that existed thousands of years before any European empire, that developed political, technological, and economic systems of a sophistication that rivaled anything we know from world history. Why have you never heard of the Kingdom of Kush, which dominated Egypt for an entire century and built more pyramids than the Egyptians themselves? Why has no one told you about Mansa Musa, whose parade through Arabia was so ostentatious in gold that it depressed the price of the metal for a decade? Why is Great Zimbabwe, with its impressive megalithic constructions, treated as a minor archaeological mystery? The answer is simple and disturbing. Because acknowledging the greatness of these African empires would destroy historical narratives that have been constructed to justify centuries of exploitation and domination. The history you learned in school was carefully edited to omit the fact that Africa was the most powerful, richest, and most advanced continent in the world for millennia. These African kings were not merely political leaders, they were considered living deities, intermediaries between the spiritual and physical worlds, controllers of the cosmic forces that governed both the material prosperity and the spiritual balance of their domains. They possessed knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, metallurgy, and engineering that allowed them to accomplish feats we would consider impossible today. Over the next few minutes, we'll embark on a journey through empires that controlled everything from the headwaters of the Nile to the shores of the Indian Ocean, from kings who possessed naval fleets that circumnavigated Africa centuries before the Europeans, to civilizations that developed writing systems, medicine, and philosophy that influenced the entire world. Prepare to discover how the Kingdom of Kush built an empire that lasted 1,000 years, how Ethiopian kings maintained their independence against all attempts at conquest, how the emperors of Mali controlled trade routes connecting Europe to China, and how all these civilizations developed forms of power that transcended anything we know about modern political leadership. This is not just a history lesson. It's a revelation about the true origins of civilizational power, about how truly prosperous societies are built, and about ancestral knowledge that can revolutionize our understanding of leadership, prosperity, and social organization. Are you ready to discover why European colonizers were so afraid of these kings that they dedicated centuries to erasing their memory from official history? Are you prepared to understand how knowledge of these African empires can transform your own view of personal power and prosperity? If this introduction is already shaking everything you thought you knew about history and world power, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately, because what we're about to reveal in the next few minutes will literally revolutionize your understanding of civilization, wealth, and leadership. This knowledge about the African kings who controlled heaven and earth isn't taught anywhere in its entirety, and that's exactly why this channel exists, to bring historical truths that have been deliberately suppressed. Leave a like now so more people can access these transformative revelations, and comment below if you already suspected that the official history of Africa had been manipulated. Your participation strengthens our mission to restore historical truth. Let's begin by revealing one of the greatest omissions in world history, the Black Pharaohs, who not only existed but ruled Egypt during one of its most glorious and prosperous eras. This truth is so impactful that it completely changed my perception of African power and how history has been manipulated to hide the greatness of black civilizations. During the 8th century BC, Egypt, the civilization we know for its pyramids and mummies, was conquered and ruled by Nubian kings from the Kingdom of Kush in present-day Sudan. These black pharaohs were not barbarian invaders who destroyed Egyptian civilization. as some have tried to suggest. On the contrary, they were the restorers of Egyptian greatness, who brought back the purest pharaonic traditions and built more pyramids than any previous Egyptian dynasty. The first of these black pharaohs was Kashta, but it was his son Piye who truly established Nubian dominance over all of Egypt. Piye did not conquer Egypt through brutality, but rather by demonstrating a superior understanding of Egyptian traditions and a deeper connection to the Egyptian gods than the Egyptians of the time possessed. He managed to unify a fragmented Egypt because he represented a return to the true spiritual origins of pharaonic civilization. What makes this story even more fascinating is that the Nubians always maintained that they were the true heirs of the original Egyptian civilization. According to their traditions, when Egypt was invaded by northern peoples and lost its cultural purity, the true pharaonic knowledge migrated south to Kush, where it was preserved in its original form. The black pharaohs were not conquering a foreign land. They were reclaiming their ancestral heritage. Shabaka, successor to Piye, established the 25th Egyptian dynasty and initiated a period of extraordinary cultural renaissance. Under his reign, ancient temples were restored, abandoned religious practices were revived, and monumental construction projects were initiated that rivaled those of the great pharaohs of the past. Shabaka also ordered that ancient religious texts be engraved in stone for eternal preservation, including texts that are now fundamental to our understanding of Egyptian religion. Taharqa, perhaps the most famous of the black pharaohs, ruled both Egypt and Kush for 26 years and transformed both kingdoms into world powers. He built magnificent temples, including additions to the Karnak complex that impress visitors to this day. Taharqa also established an administrative system so efficient that it allowed him to govern an empire stretching from present-day Ethiopia to the Nile Delta, a distance greater than that from France to Russia. What is most impressive about these black pharaohs is that they not only maintained Egyptian traditions, but elevated them to a new level. They introduced innovations in architecture, developed new artistic styles that combined Nubian and Egyptian elements, and established trade networks that connected Central Africa to the Eastern Mediterranean. Under their reign, Egypt experienced an economic prosperity it had not seen for centuries. The black pharaohs were also masters of international diplomacy. They maintained complex relationships with Assyria, which at the time was the superpower of the Middle East, sometimes as allies, other times as adversaries, but always as equals. Diplomatic letters found in Assyrian archives show that these African pharaohs were treated with respect and considered legitimate players in the geopolitical landscape of the time. Unfortunately, Assyrian domination eventually forced the black pharaohs to retreat to Kush, but even after losing direct control over Egypt, they continued to rule a kingdom that was a regional power for another 1,000 years. They never stopped considering themselves the true pharaohs and maintained all the pharaonic traditions in their southern territories. The reason we know so little about these black pharaohs is not a lack of archaeological evidence. On the contrary, their pyramids, temples, and inscriptions are abundant and well preserved. The problem is that acknowledging the greatness of these African kings would complicate narratives of racial superiority that have been used to justify slavery and colonialism. It is far easier to completely ignore this evidence than to explain how African kings could have successfully ruled the most advanced civilization in the ancient world. The legacy of the black pharaohs goes far beyond their political and military achievements. They demonstrated that true leadership comes from deep spiritual understanding, connection to ancestral traditions, and the ability to unify people through higher purposes. They ruled not only through force, but through spiritual and cultural legitimacy that was recognized even by their enemies. We live in extremely difficult times in which prophecies are marked, but many still do not realize what is happening in the world. For this, I have made my ebook available, To Reveal the Apocalypse, which you can download immediately through the first set of comments. This book will help you uncover all the mysteries of the apocalypse and transform your life. Go to the first set of comments to get your copy, as very little remains and will be removed soon. Don't waste time. Click now and secure your digital copy. And don't forget to get your Reveal the Apocalypse ebook. It is very important that you buy it quickly before the copies run out. Today, when we study leadership and power, we should look to these black pharaohs as supreme examples of how to command empires through wisdom, diplomacy, and spiritual connection. They proved that true power does not come from brute domination, but from the ability to represent and preserve the highest values of a civilization. Comment on Black Pharaohs and whether this revelation about the African kings who ruled Egypt has changed your perception of African history and how historical narratives can be manipulated to hide inconvenient truths. Now let's delve deeper into the kingdom of Kush and understand how these Nubian kings not only conquered Egypt, but transformed it into a superpower that dominated North Africa and influenced civilizations across 3 continents. This story will reveal levels of power and sophistication that will challenge everything you thought you knew about African organizational capabilities. The Kingdom of Kush, with its capital at Kerma and later Meroe, was not a primitive society that had military luck. It was a highly developed civilization that had accumulated wealth, knowledge, and power for over 1,000 years before conquering Egypt. When the Nubians finally marched north, they were not improvising. They were executing a decades-long strategic plan to restore order to fragmented Egypt. The basis of Nubian power was extraordinarily diverse. First, they controlled the richest gold mines in the ancient world, located in the region between the Nile and the Red Sea. This Nubian gold financed not only their own armies but was also fundamental to the Egyptian economy for centuries. Second, they dominated the trade routes connecting Central Africa to Mediterranean civilizations, controlling the flow of ivory, ebony, incense, and exotic animals. But what truly set the Nubian kings apart was their ability to integrate different cultural traditions into a cohesive imperial system. They adopted Egyptian hieroglyphs, but also developed their own Meroitic script. They worshipped Egyptian gods, but maintained specific Nubian deities. This cultural flexibility allowed them to govern diverse populations without destroying local identities. The Nubian military system was particularly impressive. They combined traditional African warfare tactics with Egyptian and Middle Eastern military technologies. Their archers were legendary. Assyrian inscriptions describe them as the best in the world. They also developed desert warfare techniques that gave them significant advantages against armies accustomed to combat in more temperate terrain. Taharka, the most powerful of the Nubian kings, ruled an empire that stretched from Khartoum to Alexandria. To administer such vast territories, he developed an administrative system that combined strategic centralization with local autonomy. Regional governors had the authority to make administrative decisions, but major policies were determined centrally and communicated through a system of messengers that could transmit information throughout the empire in a matter of weeks. The infrastructure construction under Nubian rule was phenomenal. They not only restored ancient Egyptian monuments but built extensively in their own territories. The pyramids of Meroe, built by the Nubian kings, are more numerous than the Egyptian pyramids and demonstrate architectural innovations that adapted pharaonic traditions to local Nubian conditions. Economically, the Nubians revolutionized the region's monetary system. While most ancient economies relied on barter or precious metals as currency, the Nubians developed a more sophisticated system that included standardized weights, measures, and even early forms of banking. Nubian merchants operated from Ethiopia to the Levant, establishing trade networks that lasted for centuries. The Nubian kings were also remarkable patrons of the arts and learning. Under their rule, Egyptian hieroglyphic writing experienced a renaissance. They commissioned extensive religious texts, historical inscriptions, and artistic works that combined traditional Egyptian styles with Nubian innovations. The result was a cultural flowering that enriched both Nubian and Egyptian civilizations. Religiously, Os Nubios maintained a balance fascinante. Elas were devoted worshippers those Egyptian gods, particularly Amun, mas also preserved Nubian spiritual traditions qui emphasized connections cum ancestral spirits e natural forces. This religious syncretism allowed them para-legitimize their rule in Egyptian terms, in quanto maintaining their distinct cultural identity. The administrative capital de Meroe was Uma city qui rivaled anything in the Mediterranean world. Archaeological evidence shows sophisticated urban planning, extensive ironworking facilities, advanced water management systems, a monumental architecture qui impressed foreign visitors. Trade goods from across Africa, Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean were all found in Meroe, indicating it was truly an international hub. Talvez most impressively, Os Nubios managed to maintain their empire durante nearly a millennium after losing direct control over Egypt. While other ancient empires collapsed after major military defeats, Kush adapted and continued prospering. Elis shifted their focus para trade with emerging powers como Rome. He developed new economic strategies, qui compensated para reduced territorial control. The Nubian military tradition continued influencing African warfare para centuries. Their combination de cavalry, archery, and siege techniques spread throughout Africa. He contributed para the military capabilities de later African kingdoms. Some historians argue that Nubian military innovations were fundamental para the success de later empires como Ghana and Mali. Women também played remarkable roles in Nubian royal power. Several Nubian queens ruled in their own right, not just como regents para minor sons. Queen Amenarenas personally led military campaigns against Roman forces. He successfully defended Nubian territory against one of those most powerful militaries in history. This female leadership tradition was virtually unique among ancient civilizations. The Nubian approach para diplomacy was sophisticated and pragmatic. Eles understood cuando para fight, cuando para negotiate, y cuando para retreat strategically. Their diplomatic correspondence shows understanding de complex international politics and ability para navigate changing power dynamics while protecting core Nubian interests. Understanding Nubian success reveals principles de leadership and governance that remain relevant today. Eles demonstrated como cultural flexibility, economic diversification, military excellence, and administrative efficiency could create lasting power even under challenging circumstances. Write Nubian kings if you realize how these African achievements demonstrate organizational capabilities and strategies that modern leaders could study and adapt to contemporary challenges. Now let's explore one of the most fascinating and mysterious aspects of African kings: the extraordinary ancestral technologies that enabled feats of engineering that our modern civilization still struggles to comprehend. When you see ancient African monuments, you're not just looking at stacked stones. You're seeing evidence of technical knowledge that has been systematically ignored by mainstream academia. Let's begin with the Nubian pyramids of Meroe and Nuri, which exhibit technical characteristics that surpass even the famous Egyptian pyramids of Giza. Nubian engineers developed construction techniques that allowed them to erect structures with astronomical precision, using granite blocks weighing up to 200 tons. Most impressively, many of these stones were extracted from quarries located hundreds of kilometers from the construction sites. The question that intrigues archaeologists is, how did civilizations that supposedly did not possess wheels, modern cranes, or explosives manage to move and position such massive blocks with millimeter precision? The answer lies in knowledge of physics, mathematics, and engineering that was developed in Africa thousands of years before it appeared in other civilizations. Ancient Africans developed lever and counterbalancing systems that multiplied human strength in extraordinary ways. They created spiral ramps and pulley systems that allowed them to move extremely heavy objects using principles of mechanical advantage that were only rediscovered by European engineering during the Renaissance. But there was something more: techniques involving an understanding of sound frequencies and vibration that allowed them to manipulate stone in ways we still don't fully understand. In Aksum, in present-day Ethiopia, we find evidence of stone-cutting technologies that defy conventional explanation. Aksumite obelisks were carved from single blocks of granite with such precise detail that they appear to have been shaped, not cut. The techniques used to create perfectly flat faces in hard granite, without leaving tool marks, suggest processing methods that combined controlled heat, vibration, and possibly magnetic fields. Great Zimbabwe presents another fascinating technological mystery. Its massive walls were built using a technique called dry stone walling that doesn't use mortar, but creates structures so stable that they remain intact after 1,000 years. Zimbabwean builders understood principles of seismic engineering and weight distribution that allowed them to construct 11-meter-high walls that flex with earthquakes without collapsing. Even more intriguing is the evidence that some African kings possessed extraordinarily advanced metallurgical knowledge. In The Hague, in present-day Tanzania, archaeologists discovered 2,000-year-old iron furnaces that operated at temperatures higher than those achieved by medieval European blast furnaces. These Africans were producing high-quality steel using techniques that Europe only developed in the 15th century. The kings of Mali demonstrated a mastery of hydraulics that rivaled anything in the ancient world. They created irrigation systems that transformed arid regions into thriving oases, developed water conservation techniques that sustained entire cities during dry seasons, and built canals that connected river systems across vast distances. In the Ife region of present-day Nigeria, we discovered evidence of bronze casting techniques that produced sculptures of artistic and technical quality that was not exceeded anywhere in the world until the European Renaissance. The Yoruba people developed lost wax casting methods that allowed them to create bronze artworks of extraordinary detail and durability. Particularly fascinating are the technological achievements of the kingdoms in the African Great Lakes region. In Buganda and Rwanda, engineers developed road systems that connected mountainous regions with sophisticated engineering that minimized erosion and maintained structural integrity through seasonal changes. These roads were built to last for centuries, and many still exist today. Africans also demonstrated an advanced understanding of astronomy that informed both agricultural practices and architectural design. The Dogon people of Mali possessed knowledge about stellar systems that has only been confirmed by modern telescopes. They understood orbital mechanics, stellar evolution, and cosmic cycles, which informed their agricultural calendars and religious practices. Water management technology in ancient Africa era particularly sophisticated. Kush engineers created canat-like systems que brought water from distant mountains a través de underground channels que minimized evaporation. Estes systems sustained large populations in semi-arid regions and remained functional para centuries com minimal maintenance. Mining technology também reached extraordinary levels de sophistication. African miners developed techniques para extracting gold, copper, iron from deposits que required understanding de geology, chemistry, mechanical engineering. Some mines penetrated hundreds of feet underground com ventilation systems que kept workers safe and productive. Textile technology in regions como Ethiopia and West Africa produced fabrics que amazed foreign visitors. African weavers created patterns and dyes que were copied throughout Mediterranean and Middle Eastern markets. Some textile techniques remain mysteries, particularly methods para creating color-changing fabrics que shift hues depending on lighting conditions. Perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests that some African rulers possessed acoustic technologies that enabled long-distance communication. Stone structures in certain locations appear designed para amplify direct sound waves across distances to several kilometers. These natural telephone systems allowed coordinated military movements and administrative communication across vast territories. Military technology também showed remarkable innovations. African metallurgists created weapons that combined effectiveness with artistic beauty. Some swords and spears show understanding to metallurgy that produced blades harder than modern steel while maintaining flexibility that prevented breaking under combat stress. Understanding estes technological achievements changes nossa perspective sobre African capabilities and challenges assumptions about technological development in ancient world. Estes innovations weren't accidents or lucky discoveries. They represented systematic knowledge accumulation, a technical expertise that took generations para develop. Comment: ancestral technology. If you perceive that these African technological achievements demonstrate levels of scientific knowledge that challenge conventional narratives about technological progress historically. We will now reveal the complete truth about the Kushite Empire, an economic powerhouse that at its peak surpassed Rome in wealth, commercial influence, and urban sophistication. This revelation will completely shatter any notion you may have about poor Africa, because Kush was literally one of the most prosperous economies that ever existed in human history. During its golden age, between 800 BC and 350 AD, Kush controlled the most valuable natural resources of the ancient world. Its gold mines were so productive that Roman geographers referred to the region as land where gold grows like plants. But gold was just the beginning. Kush also dominated the trade routes for ivory, ebony, exotic animals, precious stones, and the incense that was essential for religious ceremonies throughout the Mediterranean. The Kushite capital of Meroe was a cosmopolitan metropolis that rivaled Alexandria and Rome in terms of wealth and sophistication. Archaeological evidence shows that the city had running water, sewage systems, public baths, libraries, and residential districts that housed international merchants from across 3 continents. Foreign ambassadors described Meroe as a city where gold flows like water and wealth beyond imagination accumulates. The Kushite economic system was extraordinarily advanced. While most ancient economies depended on agriculture or simple trade, Kush developed an integrated economic model that combined resource extraction, manufacturing, international commerce, and financial services. Kushite banks operated across Africa and into Asia, providing credit facilities and currency exchange services that facilitated trade from India to Spain. Manufacturing in Kush reached industrial levels to production. Ironworks in Meroe produced tools, weapons, household items that were exported throughout Africa into Mediterranean markets. Kushite metallurgists developed alloys and production techniques that weren't matched elsewhere for centuries. Some historians argue that Kush was the world's first industrial economy, preceding European industrialization por more than 1000 años. Agricultural productivity in Kush supported population densities that wouldn't be seen again in Africa until modern times. Kushite engineers developed irrigation systems that brought Nile waters para vast agricultural areas, creating a green belt de cultivation that sustained large urban populations. Elis também pioneered crop rotation techniques. He developed seed varieties that maximized yields in semi-arid conditions. The wealth generated por estas economic activities allowed Kushite rulers para maintain lifestyles the unprecedented luxury. Royal palaces contained treasures that amazed foreign visitors. Gold furniture, precious stone decorations, exotic animals and private zoos. E-libraries containing thousands of scrolls in multiple languages. Roman historians described Kushite royal banquets como events where wealth flows like rivers, a luxury surpasses anything seen in civilized world. International trade networks centered in Kush connected transcontinents. Kushite merchants operated in India, bringing back spices, silk, and precious stones. Illustrated come China através de intermediaries, exchanging African gold para Chinese porcelain and silk. Kushite goods reached as far como Britain. Onde Kushite jewelry has been found in archaeological sites. Military expenditure também reflected Kushite wealth. Kushite armies were equipped with advanced weapons and armor that cost more than most kingdoms' entire annual revenues. Eels maintained professional standing armies, operated naval fleets in both Nile and Red Sea. He built fortress systems that required massive investments in materials and labor. Military salaries in Kush were higher than those offered por Rome para comparable positions. Urban planning in Kushite cities demonstrated wealth through massive public works projects. Water management systems brought fresh water para all residential areas. Public buildings were constructed com expensive imported materials. Streets were paved and maintained, usando techniques that kept them functional durante both dry seasons of floods. Public amenities included markets, theaters, temples, recreational facilities that served populations numbering in tens to thousands. Religious architecture particularly reflected Kushite wealth. Temples were decorated com gold leaf, precious stones, and ivory carvings. Religious festivals involved distributions of valuable gifts para participants. Temple maintenance required annual budgets that exceeded total government revenues to smaller kingdoms. Foreign pilgrims traveled thousands of miles para participate in Kushite religious festivals, attracted partially por legendary generosity to Kushite hosts. Educational institutions in Kush attracted students from across ancient world. Kushite universities offered instruction in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, engineering, languages. Libraries contained texts from Egypt, Greece, Persia, India, local African traditions. Educational funding was so generous that students received stipends para attendance. Housing was provided free. Graduates were guaranteed employment in government or private sectors. Diplomatic expenses também demonstrated Kushite wealth. Kushite embassies para foreign courts were legendary para their generosity. Diplomatic gifts included tons de gold, exotic animals, precious stones, and rare artifacts. Foreign rulers competed para Kushite diplomatic recognition because the economic benefits que resulted from formal relationships come such wealthy kingdom. Even common citizens in Kush enjoyed standards de living que were exceptional para ancient world. Archaeological evidence shows que ordinary houses contained imported goods, jewelry, decorative items, household tools made from expensive materials. Diet included imported spices, exotic fruits, premium cuts de meat que would have been luxury items elsewhere. Trade monopolies gave Kush economic leverage que extended far beyond seu military capabilities. Quando Kush controlled Red Sea trade routes, Mediterranean economies had para negotiate favorable terms, just para access essential goods. Kushite trade embargoes could devastate economies thousands of miles away. This economic power was often more effective than military force para achieving diplomatic objectives. Banking services offered per Kushite financial institutions were so reliable que merchants from distant lands preferred para keep their wealth in Kushite banks rather than local institutions. Kushite currency was accepted throughout northeastern Africa and parts of Asia because the kingdom's reputation para fiscal stability and honest dealing. Unfortunately, much evidence de Kushite wealth was deliberately destroyed or hidden when European colonial powers wanted para justify their presence in Africa. Admitting that African civilizations had achieved such extraordinary prosperity would have complicated narratives about bringing civilization para Africa. Extensive Kushite archaeological sites remain unexcavated porque findings would be too challenging para established historical narratives. Modern economic analysis suggests that at so peak, Kush's per capita wealth exceeded que the Roman Empire at same time period. If Kush existed today, it would rank among wealthiest nations per capita in world. This economic success wasn't temporary or accidental. It represented sustainable prosperity maintained a través de centuries de sophisticated economic management. Leave richer than Rome. If this revelation about Kushite wealth transforms your understanding of what African civilizations achieved economically and challenges assumptions about historical prosperity patterns. Now we will reveal one of the most impressive stories of global economic power, the kings of Aksum, who between the 1st and 8th centuries AD controlled the most important trade routes in the world, becoming obligatory intermediaries between the Roman Empire, China, India, and Persia. This Ethiopian kingdom was not just a regional power, it was literally the nerve center of world trade for centuries. Aksum was strategically located in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea, controlling access to the Red Sea and the land routes that connected Africa to the Middle East and Asia. But strategic location alone does not explain Aksumite dominance. It was their sophisticated understanding of international economics and diplomatic finesse that established them as indispensable power brokers of the ancient world. The 3rd century Roman historian Mani listed Aksum as one of the 4 great world powers, alongside Rome, Persia, and China. This wasn't diplomatic politeness. It was recognition of economic reality. Aksum controlled trade routes that carried silk from China, spices from India, gold from interior Africa, ivory for Roman markets, and incense for religious ceremonies throughout the Mediterranean world. The Aksumite kings developed such a sophisticated trading system that they issued their own currency, which became accepted from Egypt to India. Aksumite coins were minted in gold, silver, and bronze, with inscriptions in Gaea's script that demonstrated not only economic power but also cultural confidence. Finding Aksumite coins from Italy to Sri Lanka shows how extensive their trade networks were. Particularly impressive was Aksum's naval capabilities. Aksumite fleets dominated Red Sea shipping, offering protection services para merchant vessels that paid substantial fees para safe passage. Elas maintained ports from present-day Massawa para Socotra Island, creating a network of bases that enabled control over all major shipping routes between Africa and Asia. King Ezana, who ruled Aksum during 4th century, transformed the kingdom from uma regional power para uma global commercial empire. Under his leadership, Aksum conquered parts of Arabia, established tributary relationships cum Nubian kingdoms. He negotiated trade agreements that gave Aksumite merchants preferential access para markets throughout conhecida world. Ezana's military campaigns were funded interamente por trade revenues, demonstrating how commercial success enabled military expansion. Aksumite merchants were legendary para their sophistication and reliability. They operated warehouses in major cities from Alexandria para Bombay, maintained correspondence in multiple languages. He developed credit systems that facilitated long-distance trade. Some Aksumite merchant families accumulated wealth that exceeded the European royalty durante medieval period. Religious diplomacy também contributed para Aksumite commercial success. When Aksum converted para Christianity during Ezana's reign, It gained preferential treatment from Byzantine Empire access para Christian markets throughout Mediterranean. Simultaneously, Aksumite merchants maintained good relationships com Islamic Persian traders, demonstrating a pragmatic approach para religious differences que prioritized commercial interests. International diplomatic correspondence from period shows que Aksumite kings were treated como equals por Roman emperors Persian shahs. Diplomatic gifts exchanged between Aksum and other powers included exotic animals, precious stones, rare manuscripts, technological innovations. These diplomatic relationships weren't ceremonial. They were business partnerships who facilitated massive commercial transactions. Aksum's trade monopolies were particularly lucrative. They controlled access para myrrh and frankincense, que were essential para religious ceremonies throughout ancient world. Demand for esta substances was so high que Aksumite kings could essentially set prices para entire Mediterranean market. Romans paid whatever Aksum demanded porque they had no alternative suppliers. Technological innovations developed in Aksum facilitated their commercial dominance. Aksumite engineers developed advanced port facilities that could handle large ships and massive cargo volumes. They created warehouse systems that allowed long-term storage de goods and spoilage. Road construction connected interior African communities para coastal ports, enabling efficient transportation de goods from sources para markets. Agricultural productivity supported Aksum's commercial activities por providing food security, que allowed população para specialize in trade rather than subsistence farming. Aksumite farmers developed terracing techniques that maximized agricultural yields in mountainous terrain. Irrigation systems supported intensive cultivation, which could feed large urban populations involved in commercial activities. Perhaps most remarkably, Aksum developed one of the world's first international banking systems. Aksumite financial institutions offered credit para merchants across trace continents, managed currency exchange para international transactions, and provided insurance services para long-distance shipping. Some economic historians argue that modern international banking traces its origins para innovations developed in Aksum. Military power supported Aksum's commercial empire através de sophisticated defensive and offensive capabilities. Aksumite armies protected trade routes from bandits, enforced contracts between international parties, and projected power throughout Red Sea region. Naval forces prevented piracy and maintained security that was essential para international commerce. Cultural tolerance was a key factor in Aksumite commercial success. Different religious, ethnic, and linguistic groups could operate freely in Aksumite territory as long as they respected local laws and paid appropriate taxes. This tolerance attracted merchants from all backgrounds and created cosmopolitan commercial environment that facilitated complex international transactions. Educational institutions in Aksum trained personnel who were essential para managing complex international commerce. Students learned multiple languages, studied legal systems to different countries, and developed skills in negotiation, accounting, and logistics. Aksumite commercial expertise became so respected that other kingdoms hired Aksumite merchants para manage their international trade. Unfortunately, Aksum's decline began when Islamic expansion gained control over Red Sea trade routes durante 7th century. While Aksum remained uma regional power para centuries afterward, it never regained su position como intermediary para global commerce. However, durante su golden age, Aksum demonstrated how African kingdoms could achieve global influence a través de commercial excellence rather than just military conquest. Modern analysis de Aksumite commercial practices reveals sophisticated understanding de economic principles who weren't formally theorized until centuries later. Their success came from recognizing that commercial partnerships were more profitable than tributary relationships, that cultural tolerance facilitated business, and that technological innovation created competitive advantages. Understanding Aksumite achievements challenges assumptions about African capabilities in ancient world. It demonstrates that African civilizations were active participants in, and often controllers the global economic systems. Comment on trade controllers. If you realize how Aksumite's commercial strategies remain relevant to modern international business and demonstrate timeless principles of successful economic diplomacy, we now arrive at the absolute pinnacle of historical African wealth. Mansa Musa, the emperor of Mali, who possessed such an incomprehensible fortune that when he made his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, He caused inflation in the price of gold throughout the Middle East for an entire decade. To put this into perspective, Mansa Musa's fortune, adjusted for current values, would surpass the combined wealth of the richest billionaires in the modern world. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire between 1312 and 1337, when this African kingdom controlled the largest gold and salt mines in the known world. But his wealth did not come solely from natural resources. He had built such a sophisticated economic system that it generated wealth from multiple sources. In addition to the gold mines of Bambouk and Bour, Mali controlled the salt mines of Tagaza, which were so valuable that salt was literally traded pound for pound as gold in some African regions. What made Mansa Musa's wealth truly extraordinary was not just its scale, but its diversification. Mali taxed all commercial transactions that passed through its territory. And since Mali controlled all the major trade routes between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, this meant tributes from virtually all commerce between the Mediterranean world and the African interior. Every caravan carrying gold, salt, ivory, slaves, or other valuable commodities paid substantial fees to pass through Mali territory. Sua famous pilgrimage para Meca em 1324 foi display de wealth que shocked medieval world. Historical accounts describe uma caravana de 60,000 people, including 12,000 slaves, cada carrying 4 pounds de gold, e 80 camels, cada one loaded com 300 pounds de gold dust. Mansa Musa's personal retinue included hundreds of officials, soldiers, merchants, and religious scholars, all dressed in finest garments and carrying substantial amounts of precious metals. Em Cairo, onde his caravan stopped durante its journey para Mecca, Mansa Musa distributed gold tão generously que depressed o preço de gold por 10 years. Contemporary Arab historians describe how he gave away so much gold that merchants and officials in Cairo were still talking about his generosity decades later. One account mentions that he built a mosque every Friday during his stay, paying workers in pure gold. Back in Mali, Mansa Musa's capital city, Niamey, was described for foreign visitors como uma metropolis que rivaled anything in Europe or Middle East. His palace complex covered several square kilometers. He included gardens, libraries, universities, treasury buildings que required hundreds of guards just para protect stored wealth. Royal ceremonies involved distribution de gold para attendees in quantities que would constitute major treasures in other kingdoms. His educational investments were equally impressive. Mansa Musa established University de Timbuktu, que became a major center to learning, attracting scholars from Africa, Middle East, and Europe. He funded libraries containing hundreds to thousands of manuscripts covering subjects from astronomy, para medicine, para law. Educational funding was so generous that students from distant lands traveled para Mali just para access educational opportunities. Military expenses também reflected Mansa Musa's extraordinary wealth. He maintained uma standing army to 100,000 soldiers, equipped com best weapons available, and paid salaries que exceeded those offered per most European kingdoms. His cavalry units rode horses imported from North Africa and Arabia, at costs que would bankrupt smaller kingdoms just para purchase mounts, never mind training, feeding, and equipping riders. International trade durante Mansa Musa's reign reached levels que wouldn't be exceeded in West Africa para centuries. Mali merchants operated in markets from Morocco para Egypt para Middle East, always backed for virtually unlimited capital from royal treasury. Mansa Musa's letters to credit were honored throughout Islamic world porque everyone knew que Mali could back any financial commitment. Religious architecture funded por Mansa Musa demonstrated wealth através de massive construction projects. Mosques built durante seu reign used imported materials que cost more than most kingdoms' annual revenues. Gold leaf decorations, intricate stone carvings, and architectural innovations required artisans from across conhecida world. Some construction projects employed thousands of workers per years at uma time. Agricultural development também received massive investment. Mansa Musa funded irrigation projects that transformed vast areas of semi-arid land into productive agricultural regions. These projects supported population increases that provided more taxpayers and soldiers para seu empire. Agricultural surpluses também enabled Mali para engage in long-distance trade without compromising local food security. Diplomatic gifts distributed por Mansa Musa established Mali como uma major player in international politics. Foreign rulers competed para Mali's diplomatic recognition, because the economic benefits resulted from formal relationships. Diplomatic correspondence from period shows that European, Middle Eastern, and North African rulers treated Mali como an equal power worthy to respect to careful negotiation. His pilgrimage para Mecca, Tembang had significant political implications. Islamic rulers throughout Middle East recognized Mali como a major Islamic power, deserving representation in important political discussions. This recognition gave Mali influence in international affairs. He extended far beyond Sioux geographic boundaries. Cultural patronage funded por Mansa Musa's wealth supported artistic and intellectual achievements. He influenced African culture para centuries. Musicians, poets, historians, and artists received royal support. He allowed them para create works de lasting significance. Some artistic traditions established durante su reign continued in West African cultures at modern times. Perhaps most impressively, Mansa Musa's wealth was sustainable. Unlike rulers who exhausted their treasuries at través de excessive spending, Mansa Musa implemented economic policies that ensured continued prosperity para Mali long after su death. His financial management created a foundation that supported Mali Empire para more than 2 centuries afterward. Modern economists who study Mansa Musa's wealth conclude that his net worth probably exceeded 400 billion in today's dollars, making him significantly wealthier than any individual in recorded history. His wealth came not from stock valuations or real estate bubbles, but from control over physical resources and trade systems who generated continuous revenue streams. Understanding Mansa Musa's success reveals principles about wealth creation, resource management, and economic development that remain relevant today. He demonstrated how control over strategic resources, combined with investment in education and infrastructure, could create virtually unlimited prosperity. Comment richest in history. If you realize that Mansa Musa's achievements demonstrate Africa's capacity for creating and managing wealth at levels that defy any assumptions about economic development capabilities throughout history. Now we will explore one of the most enigmatic and impressive African civilizations, Great Zimbabwe, where African kings built such magnificent stone cities that European colonizers refused to believe Africans could have created such architectural marvels. This revelation will showcase levels of sophistication and wealth that challenge everything mainstream archaeology teaches about ancient Africa. Great Zimbabwe, built between the 11th and 15th centuries, was not just a city. It was the capital of an empire that controlled trade routes and gold production throughout southeastern Africa. The name Zimbabwe means House of Stone in the Shona language, and the stone structures found there represent some of the most impressive architectural achievements in African history. As ruins that survive today, so only a fraction do the original city included. Archaeological evidence suggests that at seu peak, Grande Zimbabwe housed between 15,000 and 20,000 residents, making it uma das largest cities south do Sahara durante the medieval period. These weren't primitive settlements. These were sophisticated urban centers cum complex social organization, specialized craftspeople, and extensive trade networks. As famous stone walls could give Zimbabwe seu name demonstrate engineering knowledge, that rivals anything built elsewhere durante same period. These walls were constructed sem mortar, using uma technique that required precise understanding to structural engineering. Largest walls stand 11 meters high and 5 meters thick. Built from perfectly fitted granite blocks, that have remained stable para more than 700 years. Modern engineers admit that replicating estas structures seria challenging even with contemporary equipment. Archaeological excavations have revealed evidence of the extraordinary wealth of Zimbabwe ruins. Gold jewelry, imported ceramics from China and Persia, glass beads from India, and Arabic coins demonstrate that Zimbabwe was connected para international trade networks spanning trace continents. But most impressive, some gold artifacts found throughout site. Millions of dollars worth of gold objects demonstrate that Zimbabwe rulers possessed wealth comparable para any medieval European royalty. Mining operations controlled por Zimbabwe kings were extraordinarily sophisticated. They developed mining techniques that extracted gold from quartz reefs using methods that weren't surpassed until modern times. Evidence shows that they operated hundreds of gold mines throughout region, some extending hundreds of feet underground. These operations required extensive labor organization, technical knowledge, and capital investment. Trade networks centered in Zimbabwe connected Indian Ocean commerce with interior African communities. Zimbabwe merchants operated along coasts to Mozambique and Tanzania, trading African gold para imports from Asia and Middle East. Portuguese documents from 15th century describe encounters with Zimbabwe merchants who possessed wealth que impressed European visitors accustomed para dealing with wealthy Mediterranean traders. Urban planning in Zimbabwe reveals sophisticated understanding to population management and resource allocation. Different areas to city were designated para specific functions. Residential areas, craft workshops, religious centers, administrative buildings were organized in logical patterns que maximized efficiency. Water management systems provided clean water throughout city and managed waste in ways que prevented disease outbreaks. Craft specialization in Zimbabwe reached levels que enabled production to goods que were valued in international markets. Zimbabwe craftspeople produced fine jewelry, sophisticated metalwork, carved stone objects, and decorated ceramics que were traded throughout East African coast. Some Zimbabwe artifacts have been found as far away como China, demonstrating que their products reached global markets. Religious architecture in Zimbabwe demonstrates both spiritual sophistication and enormous wealth. Religious buildings incorporated astronomical alignments que required advanced knowledge to celestial mechanics. Construction involved massive stones que were moved and positioned using techniques que modern archaeologists ainda struggle para understand. Religious ceremonies apparently involved distribution to valuable gifts para participants, indicating que religious activities were funded generously. Social organization in Zimbabwe included distinct classes com specialized roles que enabled efficient management to complex urban civilization. Archaeological evidence shows differences in housing, diet, and material possessions que indicate sophisticated social hierarchy. However, even common residents enjoyed standards to living que were exceptional para medieval period. Political organization centered in divine kingship que combined spiritual and secular authority. Zimbabwe rulers weren't just political leaders. Elis were considered intermediaries between ancestral spirits, a living community. This divine authority enabled them para coordinate massive construction projects and maintain social order across extensive territories. Military power supported Zimbabwe authority através de control over strategic locations and resources. Zimbabwe rulers controlled mountain passes que were essential para trade routes. He maintained garrisons que protected merchant caravans from bandits. Military organization enabled expansion to Zimbabwe influence throughout southeastern Africa. Educational traditions in Zimbabwe transmitted knowledge across generations através de specialized training programs. Master craftspeople taught apprentices techniques para metalworking, stone carving, and architectural construction. This knowledge transmission ensured que Zimbabwe's technical achievements were preserved and continued developing. Agricultural innovations supported Zimbabwe civilization através de techniques que maximized productivity in semi-arid environment. Farmers developed terracing systems que prevented soil erosion, irrigation methods que conserved water durante dry seasons, crop rotation practices que maintained soil fertility. Agricultural surpluses enabled large populations para specialize in non-agricultural activities. International recognition to Zimbabwe's power is evidenced in foreign accounts que describe dealings com Zimbabwe rulers como negotiations between equals rather than relationships between superiors and subordinates. Chinese, Arabic, and later Portuguese documents show que Zimbabwe was treated como uma legitimate power worthy de diplomatic respect. Unfortunately, Zimbabwe's decline began durante 16th century cuando Portuguese interference disrupted traditional trade patterns. European colonization eventually destroyed much evidence de Zimbabwe achievements. It promoted false theories about outside origins para Zimbabwe ruins. For centuries, Europeans refused para admit que Africans could have built such impressive structures. Modern archaeological research has definitively established que Zimbabwe was built entirely por indigenous African peoples using locally developed techniques. Carbon dating, architectural analysis, and artifact studies conclusively demonstrate que Zimbabwe represents uma purely African achievement without outside influence. Understanding Zimbabwe achievements reveals capabilities que challenge assumptions about African technological and organizational abilities. Zimbabwe demonstrated key African civilizations could create sustainable urban centers, develop sophisticated technologies, and participate successfully in global economic systems. Evidence from Zimbabwe shows that medieval African civilizations achieved levels of sophistication that weren't exceeded in many other parts of the world during same period. Zimbabwe rulers created a successful civilization that lasted centuries. He influenced development throughout southeastern Africa. Leave aside golden cities if you realize that Zimbabwe's achievements demonstrate African architectural and organizational capabilities that rival anything achieved elsewhere during the medieval period and challenge misconceptions about African historical capabilities. Now we come to the most disturbing and revealing question of this entire investigation. Why have the extraordinary African civilizations we have just explored been systematically erased, distorted, and omitted from world education for centuries? The answer reveals one of the greatest historical manipulations ever perpetrated, with consequences that still impact our understanding of human capabilities and civilizational development. The erasure of African greatness was neither accidental nor the result of a lack of evidence. It was a deliberate and coordinated strategy that began with the first contacts between Europeans and Africans, intensified during the periods of slavery and colonization, and continues to this day through educational omissions and academic distortions. The perpetrators had clear economic, political, and psychological motives for hiding these truths. First, the economic motive was fundamental. Recognizing that Africans had built prosperous, technologically advanced, and economically sophisticated civilizations would make it much more difficult to justify slavery. How do you enslave people who came from societies that were more wealthy, more technologically advanced, and more politically organized than many European kingdoms of the same period? The narrative of primitive Africans being civilized through contact with Europeans was essential for legitimizing centuries of exploitation. Durante o período colonial, admitir achievements africanos would have complicated justifications para European occupation. Como você justifica taking control de territories from peoples que had already demonstrated superior organizational capabilities? Colonial powers needed para portray Africans como incapable de self-governance para legitimize European administration. Acknowledging que Africans had successfully governed complex empires para millennia would have undermined entire colonial project. Educational suppression começou early, it was systematic. European schools deliberately omitted African achievements from curricula, ensuring that successive generations would grow up believing that civilization began in Greece and Rome, com minimal contributions from other regions. Mesmo quando African achievements couldn't be completely ignored, eles were attributed para outside influences. Certainly Egyptians weren't really African. Zimbabwe must have been built por Arab traders. Academic racism também played uma major role. Muitos European scholars genuinely believed that Africans were intellectually inferior and therefore incapable de creating sophisticated civilizations. When confronted com archaeological evidence de African achievements, eles explained it away através de theories about lost white civilizations, outside influences, or alternative interpretations que minimized African contributions. These prejudices became entrenched in academic institutions and continued influencing scholarship para decades. Religious motivations também contributed para suppression. European Christian missions needed para portray African societies como heathen and primitive para justify conversion efforts and religious colonization. Acknowledging that African societies had developed sophisticated religious systems, educational institutions, and moral codes would have complicated missionary narratives about bringing enlightenment para dark continent. Political control required historical amnesia. Colonial administrators recognized that knowledge de past African achievements could inspire resistance and independence movements. Educating Africans about their glorious past would have encouraged demands para self-determination. It challenged colonial authority. Therefore, colonial education systems deliberately taught that Africa had no significant history before European contact. Archaeological suppression was often direct and deliberate. Colonial governments restricted archaeological research that might reveal inconvenient truths about African capabilities. When significant discoveries were made, findings were often classified, minimized, or reinterpreted para fit preferred narratives. Some artifacts were actually removed from Africa, stored in European museums where they could be controlled, recontextualized. Media representation consistently portrayed Africa a travers de stereotypes qui emphasized poverty, conflict, primitiveness, while ignoring historical achievements, contemporary successes. These representations became self-reinforcing, creating public expectations that African history would be about tribalism, a backwardness, rather than sophisticated civilizations, technological innovations. Cultural imperialism promoted European achievements while systematically denigrating African contributions. World history became synonymous with European history, other civilizations mentioned only when they interacted with European powers. This Eurocentric approach made African achievements invisible even when they were more significant than European accomplishments during the same periods. Economic interests continued driving suppression even after formal colonization ended. Acknowledging African achievements would complicate narratives used to justify ongoing economic exploitation. If Africa was historically prosperous and sophisticated, why is it currently struggling? Answering Estes questions would require examining how colonial extraction and ongoing economic manipulation have prevented African recovery. Modern academic inertia maintains suppression a travers de institutional resistance para challenging established narratives. Textbook publishers, curriculum committees, educational institutions have invested decades in teaching particular versions to history. Changing these narratives requires admitting that previous generations were taught fundamentally incorrect information about African capabilities and achievements. Professional incentives também discourage revelation de African achievements. Archaeologists and historians who focus on African civilizations often find themselves marginalized within academic institutions that prioritize research in European or Middle Eastern civilizations. Funding for African archaeological projects remains limited, ensuring co-evidence the African achievements emerges slowly, if at all. Contemporary politics makes African historical achievements inconvenient para multiple parties. Acknowledging that Africans built sophisticated civilizations complicates narratives about development aid, highlights questions about why Africa struggles hoje, challenges comfortable assumptions about civilizational progress. These complexities make it easier para everyone para continue ignoring African achievements. Perhaps most insidiously, suppression has become internalized even among Africans themselves. Generations de-education que minimized African achievements have created psychological acceptance de-inferiority que makes many Africans themselves reluctant para claim their historical heritage. This internalized suppression perpetuates cycles de historical denial. Reversing centuries de systematic suppression requires more than just revealing individual achievements. It requires fundamentally restructuring how we teach world history. African civilizations must be integrated into global historical narratives as equal participants rather than marginal footnotes. This integration would transform understanding not just the African capabilities, mas the human civilizational development generally. Understanding these suppression mechanisms is essential para recognizing how historical narratives can be manipulated para serve contemporary political interests. African historical suppression demonstrates how education can be weaponized para maintain power structures and how recovering accurate history is essential para achieving genuine equality. Modern technology offers opportunities para bypassing traditional gatekeepers as sharing suppressed historical information directly come global audiences. However, overcoming centuries de systematic miseducation requires sustained effort and willingness para challenge comfortable but inaccurate assumptions about African capabilities. Right historical truth. If you realize that acknowledging the systematic suppression of African achievements is essential for understanding not just African history, but how historical narratives generally can be manipulated to serve political interests. Now let's explore one of the most fascinating and powerful dimensions of ancestral African royalty, the millennia-old prophecies about the return of great African kings, which predict an era when the continent will reclaim its position as a center of world power. These prophecies, preserved in the oral traditions of dozens of African cultures, converge on details that are surprisingly consistent across vast geographic distances and different cultural traditions. Across Africa, from ancient Ethiopian manuscripts to West African griot traditions, we find prophecies that describe a future period when African greatness will be restored and recognized globally. These predictions weren't made by modern African nationalists. They date back hundreds and even thousands of years, predicting current events with an accuracy that is genuinely startling. In the Yoruba traditions of Nigeria, ancient prophecies describe an era when the children of Africa dispersed across waters, referencing enslaved Africans and their descendants, would return in spirit to reclaim the heritage of their ancestors. These prophecies specifically mentioned that this return would coincide with a period when iron birds carry voices across the world, modern telecommunications, and knowledge flows like rivers between distant lands, the Internet age. Ethiopian Orthodox texts contain prophecies sobre un period quando kings of Cush shall rise again, the African nations shall command respect de todas as nations. Particularly intriguing are Ethiopian predictions, que specifically mention uma time quando descendants de Solomon y Sheba, referring para Ethiopian royal lineage, would inspire uma awakening across African territories. Dogon prophecies from Mali describe uma time de revealing, quando hidden knowledge about African achievements would flow como floodwaters para global consciousness. These prophecies mention que this revelation would be preceded por technological developments que would make communication and information sharing possible across distances greater than caravans could travel in lifetimes. Ancient Nubian prophecies, preserved in Sudanese traditions, predict uma return to builders de pyramids, not literal resurrection, mas uma spiritual and cultural revival que would reconnect modern Africans come capabilities of their ancestors. These prophecies describe uma period quando Africans would remember ways de stone cutting y gold working, and use this knowledge para building prosperity greater than pyramids. Particularly fascinating, some similarities between prophetic traditions que had no historical contact with each other. Maasai oral traditions from East Africa contain prophecies remarkably similar para those found in West African traditions, describing uma time quando scattered children to great kingdoms would reconnect with ancestral wisdom, y rebuild greatness que once was. Southern African prophecies, particularly those associated com Great Zimbabwe traditions, describe uma golden age returning, quando stone cities would rise again, the African peoples would control again paths to trade that connect distant shores. These prophecies specifically mention que this revival would begin quando knowledge of ancestors becomes available para all children of Africa. What makes estas prophecies particularly compelling is their accuracy in predicting current developments. Many specifically described uma period quando children de Africa living in foreign lands, diaspora populations, would seek connection para ancestral roots y use advanced communication para sharing knowledge de African greatness. These predictions perfectly describe contemporary movements para African historical awareness y cultural reclamation. Modern African spiritual leaders interpret current events como fulfillment de ancient prophecies. They point para increased archaeological discoveries revealing African achievements, growing international recognition de African contributions para human civilization, technological developments que enable rapid sharing de previously suppressed historical information. Several prophetic traditions describe specific triggers que would accelerate African revival. These include time quando gold flows again from African soils, current mineral wealth development, when African voices speak para-world audiences, media and entertainment influence, when children de Africa and foreign lands achieve positions de influence, diaspora success in politics, business, and culture. Contemporary events align remarkably well com prophetic timelines. Ethiopian texts describe uma 500-year cycle de decline followed por renewal que would begin in early 21st century. Yoruba prophecies mention uma period de spiritual awakening que would coincide com technological advancement que connects minds across vast distances, perfectly describing internet era y social media impact. Prophetic traditions também describe specific regions que would lead African Renaissance. Egyptian texts mention lands de gold and diamonds, South Africa, becoming centers de learning and prosperity. West African prophecies identify territories where great rivers meet, Nigeria, Niger Delta region, como sources de wealth que would fund African advancement. Spiritual aspects de estas prophecies describe uma awakening the ancestral consciousness among African peoples worldwide. This isn't supernatural possession, mas rather uma cultural e psychological reconnection com African ancestral achievements, values, e capabilities. Prophetic traditions suggest that this spiritual awakening would inspire practical achievements in technology, governance, e economic development. Educational dimensions, the prophetic fulfillment, include predictions about ancient knowledge becoming accessible para modern Africans. Contemporary developments in archaeology, historical research, and digital preservation de African manuscripts align perfectly com prophetic descriptions de uma time quando hidden wisdom would be revealed. Economic prophecies describe African nations eventually controlling paths to wealth that connect all continents, remarkably similar para ancient situations quando African kingdoms controlled global trade routes. Current developments in African infrastructure, resource management, and international partnerships suggest movement toward prophetic fulfillment. Political prophecies describe a period quando African nations would be respected como equals por global powers e consulted para wisdom about governance and conflict resolution. Growing international recognition de African diplomatic capabilities e leadership in conflict resolution reflects prophetic predictions. Cultural prophecies describe a time quando African music, art, literature, and philosophical traditions would influence thoughts and spirits throughout world. Current global influence de African cultural expressions demonstrates clear fulfillment to these ancient predictions. Perhaps most importantly, prophetic traditions emphasize that African Renaissance wouldn't involve domination over other peoples, mas rather contribution de African wisdom and resources para global prosperity. African prophecies consistently describe a future where African achievements serve humanity generally rather than creating new forms de exploitation. Modern interpretation to these prophecies suggests that we're currently experiencing early stages to predicted African revival. Archaeological discoveries, educational reforms, technological developments, and cultural awakenings all align com ancient prophetic descriptions de precursor events para major African Renaissance. Understanding these prophetic traditions provides context para current movements toward African historical awareness and cultural pride. Rather than being modern inventions, these movements represent fulfillment to predictions that were made centuries ago for African spiritual traditions. For individuals interested in supporting prophetic fulfillment, traditional teachings suggest that learning about authentic African achievements, supporting African educational and cultural institutions, and maintaining respectful relationships between African peoples and other cultures all contribute para positive development de predicted Renaissance. Comment on Return of the Kings if you see connections between current global developments and ancient African prophecies about continental revival and renewed recognition of African capabilities. We have now arrived at the culmination of this entire revelation. How knowledge about the African kings who controlled heaven and earth can radically transform your understanding of personal power, authentic leadership, and sustainable prosperity. This is not just a historical exercise, it is a masterclass on principles of power that remain relevant and applicable today. First, these African kings demonstrate that true power does not come from domination or exploitation, but from service to the community and alignment with higher principles. Mansa Musa's legendary generosity, Aksum's diplomatic fairness, and Zimbabwe's sustainable development all show that lasting power is built through benefiting others rather than extracting from them. This completely transforms how we think about achieving influence in our own lives. Consider como these African rulers approached wealth creation. Rather than hoarding resources or creating scarcity para maintain control, eles developed systems that generated prosperity para entire populations. Mali's trade networks benefited merchants throughout West Africa. Aksum's commercial systems created opportunities para traders from trace continents. This demonstrates that authentic power multiplies resources rather than concentrating them. African royal leadership styles offer profound lessons about inspiring loyalty and achieving cooperation. These rulers gained support not through fear or manipulation, mas through demonstrating genuine care para their people's welfare. They invested heavily in education, infrastructure, and cultural development, which improved quality of life para everyone under their authority. This shows that lasting influence comes from empowering others rather than controlling them. Strategic thinking demonstrated for these African kings reveals principles about long-term planning that modern leaders desperately need. Kushite rulers maintained prosperity para over 1000 anos através de diversifying their economy y adapting para changing circumstances. Ethiopian kings preserved independence through sophisticated diplomacy that balanced relationships with multiple powers. These examples show that sustainable success requires thinking beyond immediate gains. Perhaps most importantly, these African rulers understood that spiritual authority underlies political power. They weren't just administrators or military commanders, ils were considered intermediaries between divine realm and earthly affairs. This spiritual dimension gave their leadership a depth and authenticity that purely secular power lacks. For modern individuals, this suggests that developing spiritual awareness and moral authority are essential para wielding influence responsibly. Financial management practices did these African kings offer lessons that remain relevant para personal prosperity. They understood that wealth must be invested productively para continue growing. Rather than spending everything in personal luxury, ils funded education, infrastructure, and economic development that generated long-term returns. This principle applies whether you're managing uma personal budget or planning uma business venture. International relationship management demonstrated for these rulers shows sophisticated understanding to diplomacy that modern professionals can apply in business or personal relationships. African kings maintained beneficial relationships with diverse partners através de treating everyone fairly, honoring agreements, and finding mutually beneficial solutions para conflicts. These approaches work just as well in modern contexts. Innovation and technological development priorities de these civilizations reveal important lessons about progress and advancement. African rulers invested in practical technologies that solved real problems and improved people's lives. They didn't pursue innovation para its own sake, but rather para achieving specific beneficial outcomes. This focus in purposeful innovation remains relevant para anyone working in technological development or creative fields. Cultural leadership demonstrated for these African rulers shows how authentic influence shapes values and aspirations throughout society. Through their example, they inspired higher standards to behavior, greater ambitions para achievement, a stronger commitment para community welfare. Modern leaders can apply same principles para positively influencing their organizations, families, and communities. Resource management strategies developed for these civilizations offer lessons about sustainability we are desperately needed today. African rulers understood that depleting resources para short-term gains would undermine long-term prosperity. They developed renewable practices, diversified their resource base, and invested profits back into productive capacity. These approaches remain essential para both personal financial planning and business development. Educational philosophies do these African civilizations reveal deep understanding about human development and potential. They invested enormous resources in learning because they understood that knowledge creates lasting advantages that can't be taken away. For modern individuals, this emphasizes importance to continuous learning and skill development como foundation para lasting success. Conflict resolution approaches used for these rulers demonstrate sophisticated understanding to negotiation and problem solving. Rather than relying purely on force, they often used diplomacy, economic incentives, and cultural influence para achieving their objectives. These approaches often produced better long-term results than purely confrontational strategies. Perhaps most transformatively, understanding these African achievements changes how we think about possibilities para human achievement. If African civilizations could create such extraordinary prosperity and influence using technologies and resources available thousands of years ago, what could modern individuals accomplish with contemporary tools and opportunities? Leadership integrity demonstrated for these rulers shows that authentic power requires consistency between private values and public actions. Their effectiveness came partially from people trusting that they would honor commitments and act according para stated principles. This alignment between personal character and public behavior remains essential para anyone seeking genuine influence. Community-building capabilities to these civilizations reveal principles about creating environments where everyone can thrive. Rather than seeing leadership como zero-sum competition, these rulers created expanding opportunities that benefited increasing numbers to people. This abundance mindset remains crucial para anyone working para build successful organizations or communities. Understanding these historical examples provides perspective that can transform how we approach challenges in our own lives. If African rulers could overcome obstacles como desert environments, international conflicts, and technological limitations para create lasting prosperity, contemporary challenges become more manageable cuando approached con similar determination and strategic thinking. Most importantly, these examples demonstrate that greatness is achievable through ordinary humans who commit themselves para excellence, service, and continuous improvement. These African kings weren't superhuman. These were people who applied principles de leadership, planning, and community service that anyone can learn and implement. The knowledge about African royal achievements serves como proof that human potential is virtually unlimited cuando guided per wisdom, supported per community, directed toward purposes that benefit others as well as ourselves. This understanding can fundamentally transform how we approach our own goals and aspirations. For anyone seeking para achieve meaningful influence, lasting prosperity, and positive impact in their community, these African examples provide a roadmap that has been tested across centuries and proven effective in diverse circumstances. The principles remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Leave a comment saying, "Power Transformation." If you see how these African leadership examples can guide your approach to achieving influence, prosperity, and positive impact in your own life and community. If you've made it this far, you've just received one of the most transformative insights into leadership, power, and prosperity in human history. The African kings who ruled heaven and earth are not just historical figures. They are living examples of how to achieve greatness through principles you can apply to your own life. Subscribe to the channel right now if you feel that this knowledge about African kings resonates deeply with your own aspirations for leadership and success. This type of historical knowledge, which reveals practical principles of power, is not taught anywhere else in such a complete and applicable way. Leave a like to help this content reach other people who also need to understand that greatness is not a privilege of certain races or regions. It is the result of applying correct principles of leadership, service, and community development. Comment, Ancestral Kings, if you are ready to apply the leadership principles of these great African kings to your own journey to achieve positive influence, sustainable prosperity, and meaningful impact in your community. And don't miss the next video that will appear on the screen, where I will reveal specific techniques and practices that you can use to develop the same mindset of abundance, strategic thinking, and spiritual authority that made these African kings the most influential figures of their eras. This journey through ancestral African greatness is just the beginning of a complete transformation in your understanding of what is possible to achieve when you